The Detroit bankruptcy process has been difficult, but it has moved pretty quickly. A historic agreement between foundations and the state has shielded art from being sold to the DIA in exchange for lesser cuts for pensioners. But it is not over yet. Detroit Emergency Manager Kevyn Orr talks about what's to come and if this bankruptcy is an example for the rest of the country.
This has been an unbelievable set of moving parts.
Right.
When you're talking about dealing with the unions, the pensioners, the other creditors, you're talking about dealing with the DIA,
Right.
foundations, and putting this deal together. What has it been like to put together this deal, and could you have envisioned it happening this way even 8 months ago?
No. One of the things that's been so key is the efforts of the mediators led by Judge Rosen, which has really brought to the table this $816 million. You know, last year, this time I kept saying, you know, DIA Corporation, our owners, they have to find a solution. I kept staving off Christie's doing this. We came up with almost $1 billion. I hadn't anticipated that. The level of courage and effort by some of our labor counterparties, their leadership teams, in coming forward and reaching agreements that we're actually going to put forward to the voters, meaning the creditors, to go forward. The interest that we've had in some of our creditor cohorts, the unlimited tax general obligation bondholders, the swap settlement, which we thought was a good deal last year and was driven down to even a better deal this year. So, you know, it's been an eventful year. We're making a little bit of progress, but we have a long way to go.
I was just going to ask you, because the pensioners, they have to vote on this right now.
Yeah,
and
they
so
do.
Do you caution people and say this is not a done deal when people feel that we're almost home free?
Absolutely. You know, Christy, we're coming into the third term. We've still got to, we're coming out of the third term, but we still got to go through the fourth term and that long straightaway to the finish line. Got a little bit of wind at our back, a little bit of momentum, but we have 3 major milestones. We've got to get through the Senate funding, which is not certain. I take nothing for granted, nothing. I don't take it for granted the sun's going to rise tomorrow, okay? We have to get through the planned voting for some of our labor constituencies, and actually there's been some effort by some people to undermine that process, and I have to tell them how dramatic, how you know, we're talking about the difference between a cut that's somewhere between 5 and 20% and a cut that could be 60% where people are on the state rolls and are eating cat food, and then we've got to get through the confirmation hearing, which is by no means easy.
Undermine how? Tell me.
Yeah. Well, first with the vote, we're going to hopefully do the same thing we did at the House. We did some of that the past couple of weeks and explain both the value proposition for the city of Detroit, the value proposition for the state of Michigan, but also the risk element to the state of Michigan if we don't. I mean, just pushing, without this deal, you're pushing people onto the poverty rolls who'll come to the state for assistance in one form or another. So it's the old Fram oil filter commercial. You can pay me now or you can pay me later, and luckily the House decided they would like to pay now. On the planned vote, it's very complicated. I have to acknowledge that some of the retirees and employees are going through the ballot. My own staff has come up to me, members of my own staff have come up to me and said, you know, this is hard stuff. So, but we have to understand that at core, it's $816 million that goes away. And they're being hit by some of our creditors are saying, sell the art, it'll yield X billion dollars. Well, I don't know if that's true, but even if it is, that X billion dollars isn't going to be allocated to pensions. That's going to be spread across the whole $12 billion unsecured creditor class. So it's actually less money to the pensioners if you were to do that. But they're trying to confuse them. They're trying to mislead them. And I have to tell them, don't be hoodwinked. Don't be bamboozled. And then the third thing is the confirmation hearing where some of these same counterparties, some of the bond insurers who are going to the financial press, I heard today, and saying Kevyn Orr is undermining efforts in the market by not selling the art, are going to come to the confirmation hearing and say this is unfair. You know, you have to force the city to do it. It's directly contrary to Chapter 9 doctrine, where you cannot force a municipality to sell its assets, but that doesn't mean they're not going to try.
Do you believe that you can finish this process by the October deadline when the City Council can vote to have you out of this position? And if you cannot, would you stay on in some other kind of capacity that perhaps the governor could appoint you to?
Well, you know, I've never rolled off a job in my life, and this is certainly, we've all, I mean, the number of parties that are here, both in the private side and the public side, have expended a lot of blood, toil, tears, and sweat to get us to this point. But, you know, I'm going to try to keep to the schedule that we have. As the court has said, anything can happen. That schedule should slip. I have to be respectful of that. I have to understand that. We're going to try to keep to it. And then when we get to that point to see where we are, you know, we'll address it then. But I certainly would like to think that we'll be in a position to be pretty darn close, if not done.
Do you still believe that this is an example for the rest of the country, and knowing that there are a lot of cities out there that are teetering towards a financial edge, have you set some kind of precedent here where they'll go back and say, this is what happened in Detroit, let's try to execute it this way? Or is this such a unique circumstance that you don't believe that anything like this will be duplicated again?
Yeah, I've been really careful with trying to say that this is an example for other cities. You know, this is costly, it's painful. It's very difficult, but what I will say is the cautionary tale that comes out of all this is delay has no value. Okay, Mayor Cobo back in 1931 was dealing with Detroit's financial crisis and its housing crisis. That's 83 years ago. Okay, Mayor Young had was it Selkirk or Seacrest Committee? You know, Mayor Cobo has a Dodge Committee. Mayor Young had Seacrest Committee. Mayor Bing had Detroit Future Cities. This has been coming for 80 years, so it's really an opportunity for us to reset the table, try to get this thing on the right track, leave a good balance sheet to the mayor and city council, and have them continue to drive change. But any other municipality, don't wait.